The history of cinema is, to an extent, dominated by technology. The earliest feature films were black and white, usually projected at 24 frames per second and silent. In the first few years of the 20th century, they were often projected outdoors in town squares or indoors in social clubs and general-purpose public buildings. Soon, special theaters appeared with incredible speed around the world. In 1926, the introduction of sound permitted both music and dialogue to accompany the visual images. Some films were in color in the 1920s and 30s, but color films did not become standard until the 1940s and 50s. Improvements in sound and image size, as well as experiments in 3D films, followed and continue today. The most dramatic recent change is that celluloid film has been abandoned in favor of digital production and digital projection. Since 2013, the industry has been almost entirely digital, so the term film, while out of date, is still useful when discussing theatrical features. Except in its simplest form, the subject matter of most great films is difficult to isolate and restate in words. As David Cook explains in A History of Narrative Film, there is a complexity of subject matter in film that is rivaled only by literature. It may be that the very popularity of film and the ease with which we can access it leads us to ignore the form and the insights form offers into the subject matter. For example, is it really possible to catch the subtleties of form of a great film in one viewing? Yet how many of us see a great film more than once? Audiences really enjoy, but rarely analyze films. Some of the analysis that follows may help your enjoyment as well as your analyses. More than any other of the arts, except perhaps for opera, film involves collaborative effort. Most films are written by a scriptwriter, then planned by a director, who may make many changes. However, even if the director is also the scriptwriter, the film needs a producer, camera operators, an editor, designers, researchers, costumers, actors, and actresses. Auteur criticism considers the author or primary maker of the total film, often the director, to be the auteur or author. For most moviegoers, the most important people involved with the film will almost surely not be the directors, but the stars who appear in the film. George Clooney, Angelina Jolie, Julia Roberts, and Denzel Washington are more famous than such notable directors as Ingmar Bergman, Federico Fellini, Lina Wertmuller, Akira Kurosawa, Jane Campion, or Alfred Hitchcock. The two dominant figures in early films were directors who did their own editing, D.W. Griffith and Sergei Eisenstein, undoubtedly the great early geniuses of filmmaking. They managed to gain control over the production of their work so that they could craft their films into a distinctive art. Some of their films are still considered among the finest ever made. Directing and editing are probably the most crucial phases of filmmaking. Today, most directors control the acting and supervise the photography, which is carried out by skilled technicians who work with such problems as lighting, camera angles, and focusing, as well as the motion of the camera itself. Some sequences use a highly mobile camera, while others use a fixed camera. Among the resources available to directors are the kinds of shots that can eventually be added together. A shot is a single exposure of the camera without a break. Some of the most important kinds of shots are: establishing shot. Usually a distant shot establishes important locations or figures in the action. Close-up. An important object, such as the face of a character, fills the screen. Long shot. The camera is far distant from the most important characters, objects, or scenes. Medium shot. What the camera focuses on is neither close-up nor far distant. There can be medium close-ups and medium long shots too. Following shot. The camera keeps a moving figure in the frame, usually keeping pace with the figure. Point of view shot. The camera records what the character must be seeing. When the camera moves, it implies that the character's gaze moves. Tracking shot. A shot in which the camera moves forward, backward, or sideways. Crane shot. The camera is on a crane or movable platform and moves upward or downward. Handheld shot. The camera is carried, sometimes on a special harness, by the camera operator. Recessional shot, the camera focuses on figures and objects moving away, and processional shot focuses on figures and objects moving toward the camera. When you see films, you probably see all these shots at many times. Add to these the variables of camera angles, types of camera lenses, variations in lightings, and variations in approach to sound, and you can see that the technical resources of the director are enormous. The addition of script and actors enriches the director's range of choices so that they become almost overwhelming. The editor puts the shots in order after the film is finished. This selective process is highly complex and it's supremely important because the structuring of the shots makes the film. The alternatives are often vast, and if the film is to achieve an artistic goal, insight into its subject matter, the shot succession must be creatively accomplished. The editor trims the shots to an appropriate length, then joins them with other shots to create the final film. Edited sequences, sometimes shot far apart in time and place, are organized into a unified whole. Films are rarely shot sequentially, and only part of the total footage is shown as in a film. The old saying of the bit part actor, quote, "I was left on the cutting room floor," quote, attests to the fact that sometimes interesting footage is omitted. It also helps to know the resources of the editor who cuts the film to create the relationships between takes. The way these cuts are related is at the core of the director's distinctive style. Some of the most familiar of the director's and editor's choices are continuity cut, shots edited to produce a sense of narrative continuity, following the action stage by stage. The editor can also use a discontinuity cut to break up the narrative continuity for effect. Jump cut, sometimes just called a cut, moves abruptly from one shot to the next with no preparation and often with a shock. Cut in, an immediate move from a wide shot to a very close shot of the same scene. The editor may cut out as well. Cross-cutting, alternating shots of two or more distinct actions occurring in different places but often at the same time. A dissolve, one scene disappearing slowly while the next scene appears as if beneath it. Fade includes fade in, a dark screen glowing brightly to rebuild the shot, and fade out. The screen darkens, effectively ending the shot. Wipe, transitions between shots with a line moving across or through the screen separating one shot from the next. Graphic match, joining two shots that have similar composition, color, or scene. Montage sequence, a sequence of images dramatically connected but physically disconnected. Shot and reverse shot, a pair of shots in which the first shot shows a character looking at something. The reverse shot shows what the character sees. Our responses to film depend on the choices that directors and editors make regarding shots and editing, almost as much as on the nature of the narrative and the appeal of the actors. In a relatively short time, film editing has become a kind of language, a language of imagery with close to universal significance. When the editing is handled well, it can be profoundly effective because it is impossible in real-life experience to achieve what the editor achieves. By eliminating the irrelevant, good editing accents the relevant. The montage, dramatically connected but physically disconnected images, can be made without a word of dialogue. Our participation with film is often virtually involuntary. For one thing, most of us know exactly what it means to lose our sense of place and time in a movie. This loss seems to be achieved rapidly in all but the most awkwardly conceived films. There are two kinds of participative experiences with film. One is not principally cinematic in nature and is represented by the kind of self-indulgence that depends on self-justifying fantasies. We imagine ourselves as James Bond, for example, and ignore the interrelationship of the major elements of the film. The other kind of participation evolves from an acute awareness of the details and their interrelationships. This second kind of participative experience ultimately means much more to us because it is significantly informative. We understand the content by means of the form. The starting point of film is the moving image. Just as still photographs and paintings can move us profoundly by their organization of visual elements, so can such images when they are set to motion. Indeed, many experts insist that no artistic medium ever created has the power to move us as deeply as this medium made of moving images. They base their claim not just on mass audiences who have been profoundly affected, but also on the fact that the moving images of film are similar to the moving images we perceive in life. Consider the film Avatar. Sam Worthington plays Jake Sully in Avatar. He falls in love with Neytiri despite being a spy whose avatar is gathering intel that would find her people's, the Na'vi's, weaknesses. He ultimately joins the Na'vi and his brain is placed in his avatar permanently. In the still here, we see the tenderness in Neytiri and the strength in Jake's avatar. Their relationship is emphasized by their overlapping figures and their isolation from the blurred figures in the background. By contrast, the image from Citizen Kane shows the emptiness of the relationship of Charles Foster Kane and his wife Emily, who seem almost unaware of each other. The angle of the shot emphasizes their separation. The cluttered details in the background are in sharp focus, reminding us that physical objects are of utmost importance in Kane's life. The motion in the motion picture can come from numerous sources. The actors can move forward, away from, or across the field of camera vision. When something moves toward the camera, it moves with astonishing speed, as we all know from watching the images of a moving locomotive rush at us and then catapult over our heads. People move before us the way they move before the camera, but the camera, or cameras, can achieve visual things which the unaided eye can't, showing the same moving action from a number of points of view simultaneously, or showing it from a camera angle the eye cannot see. The way the film portrays motion is by the movement or tracking of the camera. The screen in motion pictures always constrains our vision, even when we imagine the space beyond the screen that we can't see. A final basic way the film can achieve motion is by means of the camera lens. Even when the camera is fixed in place, a lens that affords a wider, narrower, larger, or smaller field of vision than the human eye will give the illusion of motion, since we instinctively feel the urge to be in that physical position that would afford us that field of vision. Zoom lenses, which change their focal length along a smooth range, which moves images gradually closer or farther away, are even more effective for suggesting motion. Al Jolson's film The Jazz Singer introduced sound to film in 1927, although not everyone welcomed it. Many feared that sound might kill the artistic integrity of film because, with sound, no one would work with the images that create a film language, and film would once again become subservient to drama. Director Sergei Eisenstein knew that images in motion could sustain the kind of dramatic tension that was once thought to be limited to the stage. This is a very important point. First of all, a film is images in motion. Great filmmakers may exploit sound and other elements, but they will never make them the basic ingredients of the film. Sound in film involves much more than the addition of dialogue to the visual track. Music was a basic element of the silent films, and special portfolios of piano and organ music were available to the accompanist, who played in the local theater while coordinating the music with the silent film. These portfolios indicated the kinds of feelings that could be produced by merging special music with scenes, such as chase, love, or suspense. Apocalypse Now, a film about the Vietnam War, uses sound in exceptionally effective ways, especially in scenes such as the skyrocket fireworks battle deep in the jungle. Surround sound may intensify our experience of film. Not only do we expect to hear dialogue, but we also expect to hear the sounds we associate with the action on screen. Subtle uses of sound sometimes prepare us for action that is yet to come. Film, like every art, has history, and this history is one of the most significant contexts in which every film takes place. To make that historical context successful in our experiences with film, we have to do more than just read about that history. We have to accumulate a historical sense of film by seeing films that have been important in the development of the medium. Most of us have a rich personal backlog in film. We have seen a great many films, some of which are memorable, and many of which have been influenced by landmark films. In addition, film exists in a context that is meaningful for the life work of the director and in turn for us. When we talk about the films of Orson Welles, Ingmar Bergman, or Federico Fellini, we are talking about the achievement of artists just as much as when we talk about the achievements of Rembrandt, Vermeer, or Van Gogh. Today, we watch carefully for films by Steven Spielberg, Francis Ford Coppola, Woody Allen, Oliver Stone, Joel and Ethan Coen, Pedro Almodovar, Martin Scorsese, Spike Lee, Jane Campion, Quentin Tarantino, and Lena Wertmüller, to name only a few of the most active current directors, because their work has shown a steady development and because they, in relation to the history of the film, possess a vision that is transforming the medium. In other words, these directors are altering the history of film in significant ways. In turn, we should be interested in knowing what they are doing because they are providing new contexts or increasing our understanding of film. Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather, produced in 1972, is based on Mario Puzo's novel about an Italian immigrant fleeing from Sicilian mafia violence. He eventually became a don of a huge crime family in New York City. The film details the gradual involvement of Michael Corleone, played by Al Pacino, in his father's criminal activities during the years from 1945 to 1959. His father, Vito, played by Marlon Brando, suffers the loss of Sonny, an older son, and barely survives an assassination attempt. As Michael becomes more and more a central figure in his family's business, he grows more frightening, more alienated from those around him until, as Godfather, he becomes, it seems, totally evil. Although some critics complained that the film glorified the mafia, almost all have praised its technical mastery. A sequel, The Godfather Part II, was produced in 1974, and while not as tightly constructed as the first film, fleshes out the experience of Michael as he slowly develops into a mob boss. Coppola chose his frames with great care, and many would make an interesting still photograph. He balances his figures carefully, especially in the quieter scenes, subtly using asymmetry to accent movement. Sometimes he uses harsh lighting that radiates out from the center of the shot, focusing attention and creating tension. He rarely cuts rapidly from one shot to another, but depends on conventional establishing shots, such as showing a car arriving at a church, a hospital, a home, before showing us shots of their interiors. This conventionality intensifies our sense of the period of the 40s and 50s, since most films of that period relied on such techniques. Darkness dominates, and interiors often have a tunnel-like quality, suggesting passages to the underworld. Rooms in which Michael and others conduct their business usually have only one source of light, and the resulting high contrast is disorienting. Bright outdoor scenes are often marked by barren snow or winds driving falling leaves. The seasons of fall and winter predominate, suggesting loneliness and death. The music in The Godfather helps Coppola evoke the mood at the time the film covers. Coppola used his own father, Carmine Coppola, as a composer of some of the music. There are some snatches of Italian hill music from small villages near Amalfi, but sentimental dance music from the big band era of the 1940s and 1950s predominates. In shaping the film in a way that helps us see mafia life as neither glamorous nor despicable, Coppola forces us to examine our own popular culture, one that seems often to venerate criminals like Bonnie and Clyde, Jesse James, Billy the Kid, and John Dillinger. At the same time, Coppola's refusal to treat his characters as simply loathsome, his acknowledgement that they are in some sense victims as well as victimizers, creates an ambiguity that makes his film an impressive achievement. In summary, cinema is a complex and challenging art because of the necessary and often difficult collaboration required among many people, especially the director, scriptwriter, actors, photographer, and editor. The range of possible subject matters is extensive for cinema. The resources of the director in choosing shots and the imagination of the editor in joining them provides the primary control over the material. Such choices translate into emotional responses aroused in the audience. The point of view that can be achieved with the camera is similar to that of the unaided human eye, but because of technical refinements such as the wide-angle zoom lens and multiple moving cameras, the dramatic effect of vision can be greatly intensified. Because it's easy to block out everything irrelevant to the film in a dark theater, our participative experiences with cinema tend to be especially strong and much longer than with other visual arts. The temptation to identify with a given actor or situation in a film may distort the participative experience by blocking our perception of the form of the film, causing us to miss the content. The combination of sound, both dialogue and music, or sound effects, with a moving image helps engage our participation. Cinema is the most popular of the modern arts.